The goal, oh my god, look at the yolk. Look at that switch. Oh my god, the yolk. The yolk.
食らいやがれ。なきりエリナ。名付けて、相馬流。女王のためのエッグベネディクトドール。
This is technically Yukihira's final dish for Food Wars, and it being a rice bowl is pretty fitting, especially with the egg and everything else involved. This one is relatively straightforward, so what I'm going to try today in true Food Wars fashion is we are going to set a timer on my phone for 2 hours and try to make Yukihira's dish within that time frame. Buckle up, throw on your aprons. Thanks to Ridge Wallet for sponsoring this video. Thank you to Ridge.com for sponsoring today's video. Hello again, little brother. Big brother, what are you doing here? I've come to teach you a final lesson. There's nothing more I can learn from you. I have finally surpassed you. Brother, there's no way you could have done this. You can't gain strength without losing speed. But now I can hold 12 cards with cash. Ha! You're pathetic. Take this. That'll teach him. I have surpassed you, brother. That no longer works. Nani? I'm made of titanium with an RFID blocker. Impossible! No! Gain strength, speed, and 10% off with ridge.com/CHEFPK. Thumbs up, let's do this. Hit that timer for 2 hours, and let's start off by making our rice first, because that is going to take some time. So into our rice bucket goes 3 cups worth of rice, and then wash this 3 times and fill it to, the first knuckle. Get that rice going, and then let's move on to the pork. Now, the pork is going to be a little bit interesting because it's supposed to replicate bacon, but he did definitely use pork belly. So I'm using a big old chunker of pork belly that we are going to rinse off first, and then we're going to slice it into 1/2 inch thick boy pieces. It's super important that they are a little bit thick for the next piece of this process, which is going to eventually be salt packing this bacon. Once you have all of your pork belly cut, go ahead and grab a pan and add a layer of salt on the bottom of it, then start layering your pork right on top of that, making sure that everything is fully covered with that first layer. Add a second layer of salt right on top of that pork. Go ahead and pack it in fairly well so that way it has some full coverage. Any extra pieces can be placed right on top, and make sure those are seasoned as well. We're gonna let this sit out at room temperature for about an hour until we're ready to deal with it. Okay, next thing we need to do is make the tempura batter. For this, I am using about 1.5 cups worth of all-purpose flour and, of course, Kirin Ichiban. Try as you might, you cannot find your proper whisk, so go ahead and use a fork to start bringing this together. I end up using almost all of this Kirin, but feel free to also just use a little bit of soda water and regular water to get this batter to be a melted ice cream texture consistency. Make sure you do whisk this together with the whisk that is not the whiskey we're looking for, and then go ahead and add in 1 whole egg, which is optional, but I think it's really nice for this. Make sure that egg is fully incorporated, then take this guy and throw it into the fridge until we're ready to deep fry. The next thing I like to do is actually take out my eggs so they sit at room temperature. This is actually going to be better for when we start to poach them. We're also going to go ahead and start our hollandaise for this, and for this we're going to need about 8 ounces worth of butter. Make sure it is unsalted so you can control the salt later when you're ready to finish it. Take your stick of butter, bring this over to the stove, and start melting this over a medium heat. Now for the poaching liquid, I do like to make sure I add a little bit of distilled vinegar to my water, and I typically do about 1 tablespoon per cup of liquid. Once that's on the stove, grab yourself a metal or heat-proof bowl and drop in 4 egg yolks into this bowl. This is going to be the start of your hollandaise. Now grab your butter off the stove right before it's fully melted and let the residual heat carry it over. Before we actually start mixing it, grab your yuzu and some soy sauce, which you'll probably need more of. Go ahead and whisk your egg yolks together just a little bit to start breaking them down, and then slowly, very slowly, start tempering in your hot butter into your egg yolks. This is going to prevent it from scrambling and turning into the weird scrambled eggs that we all know and hate. So just make sure you do take your time when you're starting to temper your butter into your egg yolks. We have about an hour and a half left, and we're making really good time. Now that water you're going to use to poach your eggs is actually also going to be used to cook your hollandaise. You're going to actually be cooking this over that very, very low residual heat from the water to start thickening up your eggs. Once your eggs have thickened up a little bit, they should be ready to go. This is when you're going to add in 1 tablespoon of yuzu juice and 1 tablespoon of soy sauce, making sure that they're fully incorporated before you add both of them in at the same time. So add your yuzu, whisk that together, add your soy sauce, whisk that together, make sure that nothing is really stuck to the bottom, and if it looks good to go, you don't even have to strain this. To be honest, this tasted really good, and I don't like hollandaise. Take all of your hollandaise, place this into a heat-proof container. This is super important because hollandaise is very temperamental. Place this over some warm/hot sink water, give this a little bit of a stir, and that's ready to go. Now we have to summon Bucket Kun. Bucket Kun needs to be lit, so this way we can actually grill our pork, because they did mention that the pork was actually grilled. So get the charcoal coals going and let this cook off until they're ready to go. Back inside, we're actually going to start poaching our eggs. Crack one egg into a ladle or a cup just to make it easier to drop in. This is going to be the testing egg. It's similar to like when you make pancakes and your first pancake is basically a sacrifice. This will allow you to gauge your water and your vinegar. Mine fell apart relatively quickly, so I did end up adding in just a little bit of vinegar to this. You don't want to go too much on the vinegar though, because then it's going to be sour and weird, so just make sure you play it well. I ended up cooking off 4 eggs at the same time to kind of take up some of that space in the water, but I also tried pulling them out too early and I really wanted them to be super soft. These only cooked for about 4 minutes before I ended up taking them out of my poaching liquid. These immediately have to go into the fridge to cool down so they stop the cooking process. Just make sure you don't bump into Lucian. Now with about a little over an hour left, I'm going to start heating up my vegetable oil to start deep frying my tempura eggs. What's nice about this is that you want to set this to 350 Fahrenheit or 175 Celsius and just let it hang out. We have an hour and 10 minutes left, and this is when I actually like to look through my prep list again just to make sure we didn't miss anything. I realized that we only had a few things left, which means we're making really good time. I'm going to go ahead and start working on some garnishes. The garnishes are simply going to be some green onions that you do want to wash really well and dry relatively well. Just make sure you don't crush them in the paper towel, otherwise it kind of defeats the purpose. Slice these super thin just so that way they have a nice little mouthfeel on top of that rice bowl when you're ready to eat it. Take all of your green onions and place them into a container with a paper towel so they don't get too soggy. The rest of your green onions, make sure you save those are still good. Now for the shiso leaf. You want to roll this up into, well, you know what this really looks like. That way we can chiffonade this. Chiffonade just means you're slicing it super thin when it's rolled up, and this will give it a really nice texture without bruising the leaves. Go ahead and air them out just a little bit, placing them over a paper towel into whatever container you have, and both of your garnishes are ready to go. Pop them in the fridge until we need them. Now we have a little over an hour to go, 1 hour and 3 minutes, and we got to deal with the pork. For the pork, we do want to have another sheet tray ready with a little bit of paper towel. Take your pork and rinse off all the salt while Lucian naps away. And as you rinse off each piece of pork of all of its salt, place them back onto the paper towel to dry out. You do want to make sure that these are relatively dry or as dry as you can get them before you start cooking with them. Grab another set of paper towels and place this over the top of the pork and start drying off any excess moisture. Now grab your tongs and head outside over to your grill. I was only able to fit about 5 pieces of pork on top of my grill before it was full, so this is definitely going to depend on how big your grill is. That fat does like to flare up, as you can see, pretty hard, so you do want to pay attention to this. I was worried that it was going to be too charred, but it actually cooked it really nicely and didn't really burn it at all. But then you realize that you forgot your sheet tray in the inside of the house, so now you have to go grab that and then come back outside while this just sits here. After you've grabbed your tray, go ahead and immediately remove the pork after only cooking for about 10 minutes. Since these are relatively thin, they are going to cook fairly quickly, especially with the amount of heat that it's getting from this raging inferno that we call a grill. Now that all the pork is actually off, we can head back inside the house safely while the coals just kind of do their thing. Now back in the house, I tried a piece of pork and it was still super tender from that salt pack, and with just about 55 minutes left, we are making excellent time. Now for the shio kombu. I actually have never had this before, so I bought both varieties that they had at the store. One of them seemed to be really cut up into small pieces and the other one was made into strips. So I decided to bust out both of them and combine the two to get some really nice coverage on the rice later. Just go ahead and toss this together so that it's ready for when you're ready to season your rice. Now the only thing we have left to do is to actually deep fry the eggs. So we're also going to smoke the pork with the time left, and look at this move. Look at this. I didn't even realize what I was doing. Grab yourself some aluminum foil and cover up your pork. This is going to act as somewhat of a chamber for your smoke gun. And again, this is totally optional, but I felt like I had the time for it and it was going to give it a really nice flavor. I'm actually using a little bit of applewood chips for this, so I went ahead and got my cold smoker ready. Link down below if you want to pick one up. They're phenomenal. Started it off at the first setting, so that way it kind of started the smoke, and then cranked it all the way up until no more smoke came out of the gun. Once that was done, I went ahead and placed this in my toaster oven just to keep it warm, and with 37 minutes left, we get to do this thing. So grab your poached eggs out of the fridge, grab that cold tempura batter, give this a whisk just in case it has settled to the bottom, grab yourself a little bit of all-purpose flour to dredge, take 1 poached egg, drop this into your flour, and gently coat it. You want to remember that these are still super soft. After coating it with flour, drop it into your tempura batter and then fry this at 350 Fahrenheit or 175 Celsius. Now this part is probably a little bit extra, but I added rice to a separate bowl and added some of my shio kombu to it and then kind of cut the shio kombu into the rice. You probably don't need to do this and you could just do it in a single bowl, but I felt like maybe it would taste better and have better coverage. Take all of your now seasoned rice, place that into your main bowl, and then garnish it with a little more shio kombu and then a layer of that shiso leaf. Now try to get your egg out of your fryer oil, realize that your strainer is too big, and just grab a spoon instead. I was worried that this was gonna overcook and I didn't get it as brown as I would have liked, but the tempura batter was still nice and crispy. Now grab your smoked grilled pork, cut them in half or just use 4 whole pieces. Place this around your bowl to kind of make almost a star shape. Place the egg right on top of the pork. Now grab your yuzu and soy sauce hollandaise, and if it is thickened up a little bit too much, you can add just a drop of hot water to it to kind of bring it back together. Now glaze that beautiful egg with your yuzu soy sauce hollandaise. Add a little bit extra around just to make sure the pork is totally coated. Garnish this with a hefty amount of green onions, or a little bit amount, depending on whether or not you like green onions. I love green onions, so we got some green onions on here. And there it is, guys. Yukihira's Benedict Tempura Don from Food Wars, with 28 minutes left. There it is, guys. Yukihira's final dish from Food Wars Season 5 in his battle with Erina, and I'm really proud of myself. I was able to knock this thing out from start to finish with 28 minutes and 19 seconds left, and we were able to actually smoke that pork a little bit to kind of give it more of that bacon flavor that may have had been missing. Before we eat this thing, I just want to say thank you guys for all of the support so far. It's been a wild ride, and it's kind of a bittersweet moment, so I'm gonna enjoy it. Here we go. The goal, oh my god, look at the yolk. Look at that switch. Oh my god, the yolk. The yolk. The egg white is still, it's still creamy and soft. The egg yolk is still super rare. Yo, this bite's gonna be magical. All right, we're gonna get a little bit of egg and pork and some of the rice. Oh my god, I'm smiling so hard right now. Cheers, this is for you guys. You have that little citrusy pop from the yuzu juice, which is amazing. And then you have that saltiness not only from the pork, but also from the soy sauce. You have a little bit of sweetness from that shio kombu that we added as well. You have the rice soaking everything up, but that really beautiful applewood smoke coming through. Oh, you have the crispiness of the egg. It's creamy, it's salty, it's slightly sweet. There's citrus in it. I need to calm down. Now that Food Wars has officially ended, what is your overall favorite dish? Has it been something that I've made? Is it something that I have yet to make? Because we have a long road ahead of us. If you want to support the channel directly, check out the links below where you can buy my books. I am making volume 2, so stay tuned for that. My name is Chef PK. Get subscribed, and remember, keep playing with your food. Yo, this is good. This is good.